Hey everybody, I'm back with another audio essay. I'm feeling a little under the weather on this cold, snowy morning here in central Alberta, so I'm going to do my best to get through it. As always, if you'd like to read along, you can find the link directly below this video, or if you're listening on an audio streamer, you can find the link in the episode description and follow along there. If you are not subscribed to my Substack, please do so, bravenewnormal.substack.com. I know a lot of you listening to this aren't, so it'd be very appreciated if you did. I do not send millions of emails every week. I will not spam you. I send 1 or 2 emails, and it's generally a new podcast episode or essay, something that you would actually care about. I don't do calls to action or any silly shit like that. So sign up as a free or paid subscriber at bravenewnormal.substack.com. Thank you very much. All right, let's get into it. Beautiful landslide, the resurrection of Trump, and the slow, torturous end of Trudeau. Kamala Harris was buried by the landslide. The memory of her is rapidly decaying beneath the rubble. In a matter of months, perhaps even weeks, her campaign will be carried through an empty graveyard, laid to rest with the hundreds of other forgotten presidential hopefuls. Over $1 billion in strained celebrity blackmail endorsements, long-winded overtures from anxious talk show hosts, and woefully transparent legacy media coverage couldn't save her. It seems the philosophical musings from pundits like Taylor Swift and self-owning monologues delivered by Barack Obama weren't enough to sway American voters. Some would say it worked in reverse, driving the public further away from the absurd lunacy of the left. Donald Trump's re-election is a 100-ton stone over the tomb of the West's cultural revolution. The fog of anti-racism and gender fluidity was still thick during his first term. It took 4 years of neoliberal Democrats mainlining Marxism into every facet of society for us to understand what Donald Trump really was. A well-meaning president whose inexperience allowed for nefarious elements within the bureaucracy to conspire against him and poison his administration. The tread marks from the deep state machine are still fresh across his back, one scar particularly prominent at the top of his right ear. There was a dreadful sense of peril looming over us in the months leading up to November 5th. The election in 2020 was undoubtedly stolen. That's obvious just based on the numbers. This time, the stakes were higher. Democrats had unleashed a litany of authoritarian demons on their republic, and they appeared ready to touch the furthest edges of constitutional manipulation to hold power. 30 million illegal immigrants shuttled into swing states in an attempt to abolish voter ID requirements signaled the rise of something cataclysmic only seen at a few points in recent history, generally followed by a major war. This circumstance was no different as the war in Ukraine is slowly blooming into Europe's next great conflict. If Democrats held sway over NATO for another 4 years, there's no doubt the United States would enter into direct aggression with Russia, and thus both nations dragging their reluctant allies into the engagements with them. It is very likely we would have witnessed some form of nuclear exchange before 2028. The term too big to rig became a common phrase because it was expected that the left would swindle this election by any means available to them. Trump's victory would need to dwarf everything in the realm of decisive. It would have to be so grandiose no matter if faulty voting machines, duplicate ballots, or foreign interference could have any significant influence over the outcome. It would need to be a knockout punch so thunderous the swamp would shake and the creatures lurking below would reconsider their methods for fear of triggering a full-throttle off-with-their-head-style revolution. It was the center that provided the horsepower. Figures like Joe Rogan, Brett Weinstein, Michael Schellenberger, Glenn Greenwald, and others who electrified the resistance. Although most didn't endorse Trump vociferously, it was clear which side they were on, and more importantly, which agenda they opposed. We knew who commentators like Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, and James Lindsay were supporting since they made no attempt to obscure their preference. Therefore, it was the moderates who made the difference and tipped the scales toward Trump. It was the additions of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Elon Musk to Trump's campaign and proposed administration that propelled the charge. There was nothing partisan about the Republican ticket. This was a battle of the truly virtuous versus the superficially righteous and morally bankrupt. Trump's appeal isn't necessarily in who he is, it's what he represents. In 2016, he pulled off the biggest political upset in history, and he did it without poise, eloquence, or charisma. He was a regular guy who treated televised debates like a hangout at a bar. He cracked jokes at other people's expense, gave some of them hilarious nicknames, and somewhere in between tossed out a few jewels to let listeners know he belonged there more than anyone on that stage. When Democrats and members of his own government conspired with intelligence agencies and the media to take him down, we took it personally because, Despite the massive gap in wealth, we identified with him. With every hit piece and indictment, we became more enraged. When they censored and canceled him, a sitting president, he met the outcasts in the middle, and it was through Trump that we found our common purpose. In their quest to purify the West, the left had alienated so much of the population most of us collected around that space between the trenches. And it was there we united as a majority with Trump as our primary weapon against their ideological assaults. He's a wrong thinker, an alleged hate speaker, a woke phobe. He's us. Justin Trudeau congratulated Trump on his victory through gritted teeth at a media scrum. His PR team wrote a half-hearted message on X that read like a plea for mercy. The Trudeau Liberals, in their infinite stupidity, appeared to have bet the House on a Democratic win, and in doing so revealed not only how disconnected they were from public discourse, but also how little they understood about their own geopolitical position. They spent the previous year accusing conservative opposition leader Pierre Poilievre of being Trump 2.0, and in the process made clear to the now newly elected president of our closest ally exactly how they perceive him. To make matters worse, Trudeau put a devastating cap on Canada's oil and gas production while Americans were heading to the polls, as if to signal his alignment with who he believed would be his new tandem partner in North America's economic seppuku. But it didn't work out that way, and he once again cut his country off at the knees, eliminating the last remaining bargaining chips in crucial trade negotiations with the man who wrote The Art of the Deal. Trudeau's deputy prime minister, the predictably volatile and twitchy Chrystia Freeland, fielded questions from reporters about Trump's election sweep after a Canada-U.S. Trade Committee meeting. She erratically attempted to exaggerate Canada's significance as a key export market for the United States, while forgetting to mention the vital role Canadian oil and gas plays in that relationship. In the USMCA, formerly NAFTA, trade agreement, it appears the U.S.-Mexico marriage is strengthening while Canada has come untethered from the dock and is drifting out to sea. Trump has acknowledged the U.S.-Canada border as a national security threat and is shifting his focus on foreign adversaries away from Russia and onto China, which presents a tremendous problem for the Trudeau Liberals since many, including Trudeau, are enmeshed in an entangled mess of questionable threads linking them to CCP-affiliated organizations. A recent U.S. congressional report identified China as the source of North America's fentanyl epidemic, with many of the named CCP-related figures and consortiums operating openly in Canada. The strange connections between Chinese criminal groups and the Liberal Party will only serve to further deteriorate relations between Canada and the United States going forward, as is evident in Canada's exclusion from the AUKUS Security Alliance, a new defense coalition between the Five Eyes allies with Canada and New Zealand removed. The Indians are circling the wagons. Trudeau is cornered from all angles. His government-funded legacy media bootlickers are scrambling to construct a narrative that illustrates Trump as a Hitlerian figure salivating at the prospect of decimating Canadian assets. But it isn't Trump who's bad for Canada. It's Trudeau, and it always has been. Our king of magical windmills and limitless carbon taxes euthanized his most valuable industries and then blamed Trump, Poilievre, and populism for the fallout. He and the radical left in general despise populism because to be a populist, you must first be popular. And popular they are not. There is only one man in the Canadian political sphere who can reverse course and restore our partnerships with the United States in any meaningful way. And that man happens to be a populist who takes great personal pleasure in ripping the guts out of Trudeau's neo-Marxist utopian fantasy. They tell us Pierre Poilievre is importing Trump-style politics into Canada. And at this current moment, that's a good thing. It might be the only approach that can pull us back from our descent into the third world. All right. I stumbled and fucked up a bit at the end there. I apologize, guys. I'm not feeling great today. And this was difficult. So I'm actually really glad I wrote this and got this out there before yesterday, because this essay would have had an entirely different tone. For those of you who may are not aware, which I think is most of the Western public, just based on the fact that there's been little to no media coverage on this and nobody on any of the social media networks is really talking about it. Ukraine has launched long-range missiles into Russia, provided by the U.S. and the British, which is basically Russia's nuclear red line. This morning, Russia launched intercontinental ballistic missiles into Ukraine, And those intercontinental ballistic missiles are capable of carrying nuclear warheads. So it is very, very obvious to anybody paying attention that Russia launched those missiles into Ukraine this morning as a warning, basically saying, don't fuck with us, pull back. It seems like the Biden administration and, well, whoever's in charge there, because it's not Biden, I imagine the usual deep state players that we're used to seeing in every presidential administration since Reagan, are dead set on launching World War III before Trump takes office and launching him into a conflict that he can't get out of. And that's where we are. Here in Canada, of course, Justin Trudeau, again, is posturing in front of the media, putting on his tough guy face, which is so embarrassing. It's kind of like when Drake does it. Drake, the rapper. I mean, if you've ever watched any of his music videos, when he tries to do his tough guy face, it's just makes you cringe inside. It's the same deal. I've been thinking a lot about it this last 24 hours, and it's, I don't know if these people are purposely thrusting us into a global war or if they're just so stupid they don't understand what they're doing. But, by a lot of measures, Putin is a fairly liberal president. I know he's not liberal by our standards, but by Russian standards, he is. And he's received a lot of scrutiny on the Russian side for not being more of a hardliner and not wiping Ukraine off the map. And now we are pushing him to do exactly that. And I don't think people understand how dangerous this situation really is and how it threatens the livelihood of virtually every human being on this planet. So when I wrote that middle paragraph about, the Democrats potentially, ushering us into a world war and initiating a nuclear exchange, at that point, it seemed like there was some hope for us and the world, and that things were going to change dramatically. And now I feel like it is highly probable we will see some form of nuclear exchange before Christmas. And what that looks like, I don't know. I don't know what that means for us, but we are right across the water from Russia, especially us here in Canada. You can stand at the furthest edge of Alaska, which is an American state, but technically part of Canada. You can stand at the furthest edge of Alaska and see the shores of Russia. Like, we have a very distorted perception of the world. It's a fucking globe. When you look at an atlas, when you're looking at the map and you see Russia, to one side, and then, Europe and North America to the other, that's not what the world really looks like. It's a globe. And Russia could very easily launch intercontinental ballistic missiles into North America, and we would have roughly about 5 minutes to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to respond. And I do not trust the Democrats or the people behind the Biden administration to make level-headed choices. And it is clear now that they are not going to, that they are determined to launch another world war. I'm going to write about this in the next week or two. I just want to see how things develop before I move forward. But it is weighing very heavily on my mind right now. I think, I say this every time I record one of these, that this is the issue of our time, but this is the greatest, most gravest threat we have ever faced. This is worse than the Cold War. And we need to get out into the streets. We need to be on social media. We need to make our voices loud. We need to get close, if not, if not sparking a complete and total revolution over this, because this threatens all of us, no matter which side of the political spectrum you reside, or if you're in the middle like me. It does not matter. This is dangerous to every single one of us. There is no ideological shield that's going to protect you from a nuclear war. And we are so close. We're the closest we've ever been. And I know I was supposed to talk about this essay a little bit, but at this point in time, it just seems like it doesn't matter. We have elected, I don't know if it's we've elected or if we've been, hoodwinked into some of the weakest most naive and incredibly stupid Western leaders in the history of our countries. And Justin Trudeau being the weakest of them all. I mean, honestly, I put Joe Biden above him in terms of mental capacity. And now we are looking at something that none of us are prepared for. The world isn't prepared for. I mean, the world might not exist after this. So rather than talking about this essay, I wanted to get that off of my chest. I'm going to sit down and kind of work through my thoughts and ideas. Like I said, I just want to see how this thing develops, and then I'll start writing. But that for sure will be the topic of my next essay. I am absolutely positive, because we need to be aware of how dangerous this is, and just how catastrophic a war between NATO and Russia would be. Because this is not 1939. This is not 1914. Those wars were ground wars that were fought with, what we would consider rudimentary technology today. I've been reading, I'm still kind of making my way through Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And, I was reminded of how surprised the British and the Americans were by the level of German technology, their tanks, their planes, just their weapons in general. The British and France and the Americans and everybody on the side of the Allies were not prepared for what the Germans had in store, for the weapons that they had developed at the time. And I think we're not prepared for the level of destruction these weapons that we have now can actually accomplish. The nuclear bombs that Russia has, and America both have, are far more destructive and powerful than the atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan at the end of World War II. Right? There's no such thing as limited nuclear war. It does not exist. If a nuclear war begins, the world will be over within 12 minutes. And that's a frightening thought, man. So anyways, that's it. Please subscribe, bravenewnormal.substack.com. I'm going to be writing more about this in the weeks to come. I have 2 new podcast episodes coming. First will be next week with Adam Zivo. We talk about the safe supply programs and just the destruction that they've done in Canada, particularly in Vancouver and British Columbia, but the danger of them, no matter where they exist. And episode after that will be with Sam Cooper. We talk about the 41 Canadian political candidates who are identified as being quote-unquote preferred by the Chinese Communist Party and their affiliated networks. And yeah, that's it. I don't know if I'm even making sense here. My mind has been, I just have so much going through my head right now, and I think I need to sit down and write and get it all out. So I'm going to go do that. You guys take care of yourselves, and please, just, we need to pull away from the culture war issues. It does not fucking matter. Boys wearing dresses, people pretending to be opposite genders, anti-racism, all that bullshit. That shit doesn't matter anymore. We're all in danger right now, and we all need to make our voices heard and let the powers that be know that we will not go along with their third world war. And that's it. bravenewnormal.substack.com. Sign up and subscribe, and I will see y'all again soon. Peace.